Better late than never. The Helping Friendly podcast is coming at you live here on Wednesday, December 10th. Brian and Megan, we're both stuck at the traffic light, just waiting for it to go green so that we can continue our Christmas shopping, so we can continue going to the library, so we can continue going to concerts, so we can continue going to the cinema. Endless stuff to do, endless places to go, kids to take everywhere, school drop-offs, work commutes, yada, yada, yada. That feeling of being trapped. The light goes from green to yellow so much faster when you're in a hurry than it does when you are just kind of casually out doing your day. Meg, do you have any strategies for how to wait out a long traffic light?
Well, I haven't lived in New York City, so I probably should, but I don't. I don't know if you know this about me, but I am a really impatient, aggressive driver.
I don't know if you know this about me, but I used to be an extremely impatient, aggressive driver. And then I started commuting to work about 30 minutes a day, 3 to 5 days a week. And I got to a point where I was just like, what is the purpose of all of this stress? And it doesn't end there. It requires a lot of strategy after that point, and like meditation within the car, and like trying to extend empathy to the truck driver who is driving way too fast in the right lane. And that's the reason why you can't merge so that he can go in the left lane. All that sort of stuff. You're just like, I don't know. What was the point of it all is kind of what I asked myself. That's how I
Yeah,
try to deal with a traffic light.
I can get that. I understand that. I think I've come to an okay place managing my own stress in traffic. It's when I'm in the passenger seat that I have the
Oh,
hardest time. But I love driving. I wasn't a great driver when I first started driving, but I've been living in cities for the last 20 years at least, and I've gotten really good. I'm a really good driver, I think. And so I love being on the road. I love driving. I love a road trip. So I don't mind too much if there's traffic, as long as I kind of know when it's going to end. I can't believe we used to sit in traffic and not know when it was going to end. Like, at least now we have these things that say 7 more minutes, that's like so incredible. But yeah, I don't mind it. But when I'm in the passenger seat, I have a hard time allowing the person in the driver's seat to make the decisions. Sometimes I'm like, I would have done this differently, but it's okay. I'm learning.
my 10-year-old son has taken on all the great qualities of a backseat driver. He's never driven, but I do things. And he's like, why did you do that, Dad? Dad, you need to get over. I'm just like, I already have one of you in the car. I need you to just sit
Yeah.
in the back, read your magazine, watch your tablet. Like, I'm capable of doing this. I love driving too. I don't like sitting in the passenger seat. But today we are going to be talking about this fusion of tension and stress with the modern world and what it does to us, and the absolute bliss when you just allow yourself, like Del Griffith said in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, to be a twig on the shoulders of a mighty stream. Just let the world take you. It leads to bliss, as we will discover here in today's episode. We are doing a Mount Rushmore on one of the first Fish songs ever. The when in doubt, let's close the second set with it. The hey, this is so much better when you surprisingly segue into it in the middle of the first set, guys. The is it still worth hearing outside of its 1990s versions, in a great category with the song we talked about last week, Possum, yet another song about what can happen when you're on the road, where your end could be and or not. I'm very excited about this. I lived in the slave chill bliss zone for an extended period in time. It was a fantastic vehicle for reading, for chilling out as the holidays get started, for driving. I'm really excited to dive into this. How are you doing overall, though, today, Meg?
Yeah, I just want to comment that this has been a really, really great song for me to be listening to this week too, because I'm writing reports for my third graders, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of writing. It's a lot of editing other people's reports. and having this on in the background, it's so uplifting. It's like the Hood week in a way, it's like when I was listening to Hood for that week and it just totally shifted my perspective. There's something about this song that we're going to get into all of it, of course, but there's that one part where Trey just climbs out of it and it's so hopeful and positive. And there are very few bands that can do what Fish does the way that they do that, emerging out of wherever they are and peaking something so perfectly. And so this is to me the closest that I've gotten to feeling really great the way that I felt when we did our Hood week. And it made me fall in love with the song all over again, I have to admit. And it made a hard week a lot better.
I feel like this one, along with just looking back at the ones that we've done, this along with something like Cross-Eyed,
That was a good one.
I would say Carini, just because like you're only using these like all banger versions. Waves to a certain degree, although some of those dropped off. But like this, Hood, Jin, Carini, these were some of my favorite Rushmores we've done, where you really live in a space for an extended period in time, and there's enough diversity in the slave jamming from a year to year standpoint, but it
Mhm.
all delivers in the same way that like most hoods do. Um, there's a feeling Fish gets to when they get quiet, plus contemplative, plus that a peak is on the horizon. That is not the reason I go and see them or I listen to them so much, but is a reason I do this so much and am happy to think about this band on such a regular basis, and to live in a song that's really designed to kind of be like a cocoon for them to reemerge from. It
Yeah,
just, it was really special.
I like that imagery. There's, to me, a few songs that have given Fish kind of their emotional core, and this is one of them. I think this band, I would have been less interested in them if they didn't have songs like Slave and like Hood that have a deep emotion to them. And I think the band would have just come off as very funny and smart and cerebral and interesting and talented, but not hooked me in the way that they did if they didn't have songs like this. And whenever I do a listening project like this, which is something that I never would have set out to do on my own, that's probably not true for you, but for me, it's a really amazing exercise to listen to the same version or a different version, excuse me, of the same song and recognize what makes it so undeniable. And with a song like Slave, to me, it's just the emotion.
Yeah, and I think that you make a really good point that like Fish toes this very interesting line between that impressive nerdery prog rock style that is more about the chops and then they're nailing their parts, um, with this kind of abstract, uh, kind of like that like northeastern New York City style of them that is like gonna shock you in a way with their
Yeah.
experimentation and the risk taking. Um, but then the third part of all of that is the emotional side, which sometimes comes out as humor, but other times comes out in a very earnest way, like a song like Slave to the Traffic Light or a song like Harry Hood, where the entire design of the music is not necessarily to impress you with the chops, it's to reach deep into your soul and impact you. And that is definitely something that without that, I don't think Fish has the reach that they have. And living in a song like this that was literally just designed to do that, it's a really, really special place to be. Sometimes I like living in the darkness and the weirdness. Sometimes I like living in like, hey, everything's going to be okay. You just got to build up through this gorgeous space of quiet music that the band is playing. And once you reach that peak, it's going to be all white lights, arms in the air, glow sticks. It's going to be great.
Yeah. I think there's something interesting that this made me think about, which I don't remember when it was, but we've done a lot of episodes. But one of them was we were talking one time about how the jam band space is a safe place for men to have feelings. And
Mm,
I do kind of think that this song and songs like this, like Hood and Fluffhead, they do allow, there's a lot of men in this fan base, and this is a way
There
for
are.
them yeah, a couple. So I've heard. And I think it's really nice for that these songs give men a place to feel cathartic about their emotions and also tap into that. And I think that's something about Fish that people don't talk about enough, that there really is this is a place where there is a lot of emotion, whether it's a joy or sadness or like, well, we're going to talk about it today. There's a lot of these versions that have a kind of a deep well of melancholy that they're tapping into, and it's really beautiful. And I think I'm just grateful that Fish has written music like this, and that all these dudes can get in touch with their feelings.
I mean, I didn't think about it before this conversation, but we definitely need to book Scott Galloway for a 2026 interview because his book, Notes on Being a Man, is
Yeah.
addressing the challenges that men have been facing in the last decade or two in American culture, the need for community, for
Yes.
the freedom to express their emotions in productive, positive, but also, negative and challenged ways, and how they work through that. And maybe what we need to really get to him as at is that the best way to reach men in need here is through the music of Fish. So we're gonna book
Yeah.
that for
I love
2026. I'm right
I
there with
love
you though. It's
that.
like the catharsis of Fish and the catharsis of sports, the trauma
Yeah.
of Fish, which I'm going to get into here in a second, and the trauma of sports. I'm currently dealing with a very good friend who has that intersecting right now. Those are important feelings to have. Those are big, important feelings to have. So, in terms of talking about the positives of the Fish experience and also the negatives of the Fish experience, I want to ask you something.
Oh boy.
Did you hit in the Sphere Lottery?
I did. I did. I did. I can't believe it. I am shocked, but I did. Yeah. I didn't get as many as I wanted because my friends and I are trying to coordinate to have seats together, or at least be at the same show. But I did. Looks like I'm gonna be going the second weekend,
Nice.
potentially the third if my friends hit, then I'll sell these
Address
and
it.
adjust. Yeah. But I did. How about you? Have you had any luck yet?
I did not. I just checked my email. I think everyone I know who put in got tickets except for me. And
Really?
actually, except for me and my good buddy Dave Goldstein.
That is so nice.
I I am okay with it. This is part of the experience, you know.
It
It
is.
would have been a very nice vacation to have. I You know this well about me. I am of the belief that if something good happens to me, it means that like good things probably cannot happen for years. And I got Mexico 2024. So like
I
I
do
don't
know
have
this
anything
too.
I don't have anything I don't have any expectations of good things happening again with the world of Fish. You know, I had Mexico 2024 and then Dick's 2024. And then I
Mhm.
followed that up with Boulder 2025 and No Sphere 2025 or 2026 and probably Boulder 2026 again. So, you know, I am just in the acceptance phase. This is trained in me from being a Cubs fan. One good thing
Mm.
happens, and you've got another 108 years of sadness and waiting and longing. Um,
Peaks and
I was
valleys, Brian.
peaks and very long valleys. Like, you know, if one considers the valley between the Appalachian Mountains and the Rocky Mountains to be a singular valley, that's the valleys we're talking about here. I will say though, my good friend Dave Goldstein, big shout out. His experience takes the cake because he has not yet received tickets for Sphere. I guess like I technically
You c
could still get
I
the
know,
email,
didn't
but
it
I think it's
Yeah,
like tonight. So
tonight, right?
maybe this is just me projecting, hoping that things change. Um, but Dave Goldstein is pretty certain he's not getting tickets to Sphere. And he found out that his first baseman, Pete Alonso, just signed with the Baltimore Orioles. The intersection of sports joy and sports just dismay at the world around you, it knows no bounds. And it's a good lesson for men in terms of your expectations can be up here and reality is right here. And you got to live in reality.
Well, yeah, that is my bread and butter. What I do all day is just to help little boys understand their feelings. So I'm here for the men too, and I'm happy to help anybody out that wants to work through their peaks and valleys emotionally. But you never know, Brian. Maybe something will happen for the end of the day. I put in 2 requests for this, another second one for the second weekend. So I haven't gotten the email about that. At this point, I'm kind of hoping I do not, because that credit card bill, I might not survive it. It might, I'm not sure what would happen. It was a big gamble, so we'll see. But yeah, I promised myself I would go to the Sphere after missing the first one. I'm not a huge Vegas person, but I need to redo the last time I saw Fish in Vegas in '96, because pretty it was pretty dramatic for me personally, and it was quite an experience. And I would like to go back and see Fish there, and I want to see what they do with the Sphere. I feel like now that they know how to do it, I'm really excited to see what they do. And I promised myself I'd go once. So looks like it's
If
this time.
if I know anything from the way to plan these type of fish experiences, it just comes back to when I went to Dick's 2012. I knew that they had a great run in 2011. They were gonna play even better when it came to 2012, and I gambled correctly. That was the one to do. I remember going into Mexico 24 thinking they just played Gamehenge. I'm probably going to get like the
Yeah,
most
totally.
mid of fish runs
I
ever,
thought you would too.
and I'm just gonna have to take the vibes. And everyone was trying to prepare me for the vibes, and then the vibes were like another level. So we'll see what
You know
happens.
what I'm doing in my head now is like, well, I got the second weekend. You know it won't be that good, because the first weekend will be exciting and the last weekend will be like the end. So now I'm gonna get the middle. Like that's
Mm.
the messed up fish stuff we do in our head. This like idea of like
It
preparing
does change things. You're
expectations.
right, because, like, when was the last I have they since I guess the Baker's Dozen, like, done this, like, repeat weekend
Right.
thing at a venue, so it will have that.
Ooh,
But
the middle of the baker's dozen was good.
I went the second weekend of the Baker's Dozen. I think that that probably holds up as our best weekend, overall, between double
Mm,
chocolate and Jimmy's Night and elements of cinnamon, and you throw in there powder and, jam filled on one side and holes and maple on another side. Like, that's a good
yeah,
week of fish. Um, we'll see. Yeah, maybe I'll get an email, and all of this will be for not this dealing with my emotions publicly. But you know how
I'm
I
proud of
am.
you. I'm proud of you for working it
I'll
out
be happy to
publicly.
stream.
You will. I mean, the Sphere shows are cool to stream, it's fine, but, yeah, it'll be good. Well, let me know. Let me know if something changes tonight. I'll
I
be
will.
pulling for you.
Is there anything else we need to we've got Mexico coming up, we got Sphere. I guess we're just
Mhm.
waiting on summer tour. I saw some rumored dates that I did not like at all.
Oh, really?
Um,
I haven't seen them. What give us the highlights.
it was tour opener in Madison at the end of June, followed by 3 nights in Boulder over the 4th of July, and
Again?
then again, and then a Colorado to, I think Merriweather was where it would end. It was a lot of like like Deer Creek. There was a 3 night Deer Creek run. There was, I think, a St. Louis run. I think here's my thing, and maybe this is, maybe I'm going to sound like a Yankees fan right now, continuing to complain about the Yankees' demise in the 21st century, where like nobody gives a shit because you had so much winning. Um, I have a friend who's a Lakers fan who will like complain to me about bad cap moves in the Lakers, and I'm just like, I don't give a fuck, man. Like, it's the Los Angeles Lakers. In 5 years, you will get the best free agent, and you'll revamp at that point in time. So maybe I'm off base here to complain in any way, but I liked the tradition of Colorado ending the summer tour. I
I
really
know, it's
liked that.
nice.
I don't want to be this afterthought second run of the summer,
No.
4th of July, like middle of the, like, I just honor us because we deserve your honor. Like if Colorado has meant so much to fish, we are not just the second stop on a tour. Come on.
Come on, I agree. What are the East Coast things? Do you remember any of them? Any of the
I don't remember offhand. I think
Okay.
maybe there was a Jones Beach. I think
What?
that there
Come
was, I
on.
know there was a Merriweather. I don't think there was a Man. I don't think there was a SPAC. I sent it out to someone who said that these dates are bullshit. So maybe I'm just like
Okay. Yeah.
repeating past info, but we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, I'll be excited to see what that is. It feels a far way off now. I mean,
But
I
it's
have
the
to
next
wait.
thing.
It's the next thing. Yeah, I guess it is the next thing.
Maybe we'll have Amanda makeup, who knows?
Oh my God, that'd be thrilling. I'd love that. I'd be the happiest person at Mondegreen again.
All right, let's talk Slave here. Meg, you always do such a fantastic job with the overview of the song. I do want to say before we jump in, I saw a couple questions about this in the chat. We did not release a list. We are working right now as a duo, and we just are falling behind on a few things. So we apologize. But Meg has the list in front of her. Maybe you can throw some highlights out there as you're going through it. But tell us, what is Slave?
So, like you mentioned earlier, Brian, Slave to the Traffic Light was one of the first original songs to debut with Fish at one of their earliest shows in their second year as a band. The song was first played on December 1st, 1984, at the Upstairs at Nectar's. There were about 200 people in the audience. Mark Daubert was sitting in on drums, and Holdsworth was playing what would later become Page's part. Fluffhead also made its debut that night. In Slave's history on fish.net, there's an amazing quote. It says, Trey may have written it as a child, but that mostly goes to show why he's Trey Anastasio and you're not. This is because Slave is a 4-chord masterpiece, and it has really stayed within the exact same structure since its first performance, with the intro and the jam segment stretching out to varying degree. The song was, of course, on the white tape demo. There's a 4-minute acoustic version with a classic rock solo and a beautiful build. If you have not spun that in a while, put that on tonight. God, it's so beautiful, and it really speaks to their ability to tap into emotion with very little in terms of gear. And they were so young, and it's still so impactful. This song was played about 6 to 10 times a year until 1991, when it was only played twice. Then it was shelved for 241 shows until they played it at the Cincinnati Zoo in August of 1993. And then the band played the song in important moments at important shows like Red Rocks and at Portland during the holiday run that year. And throughout 1993, the structure and the performance of the song really follow the same pattern. It's a perfect build with a super emotional peak. And in 1994 and 1995, Slave becomes this kind of staple set closer. And it has really stayed in the rotation ever since, with most of the classic versions happening between 94 to 97, I'd say. 94 brings that really divine floating delicacy to the song. That is when the jam starts to stretch out and really become more emotional and more thoughtful. The dynamics that the band was playing with at that point, with patience and control, are put to such excellent use in this song. And that's why I just love 1994 Slaves. They never rush the build in those Slaves in 1994. There's so much patience. What's cool about the song as it creeps toward the end of the 90s is that in 1996, 1997, we start to get more of that darkness that starts to creep in, thinking about versions like the Clifford Ball. And 97 Slaves are even more patient and gradual. And what is really cool is that their use of exploration and deep improv means that the builds become more groupthink in a way. They're much less Trey led. They're much more full band builds up. And then Trey will kind of explode out usually at the end. And in 98, the interplay gets really strong between Trey and Page in the jam. Page uses the electric piano a lot more in the song. And the versions just become a lot more gauzy and kind of even more delicate. And it's played less and less as Late 1.0 goes on. And there are a few memorable performances in 2.0, and it, of course, ended the final set at Coventry. There are good performances in 3.0 and 4.0. We're going to talk about a few probably, but to me, nothing ever reached the heights of a 1.0 Slave. An ideal Slave to the Traffic Light for me, it starts tight and crisp, and then it jams, emphasis on jams, in a really ethereal and super patient space. and then it builds out of that organically and gradually until the peak can't be denied any longer, and then it just explodes out. I would say if you haven't read the write-up on the history of Slave to the Traffic Light on the website, I think it's really great on fish.net. So check it out. It also has an amazing metaphor about what the jam and slave is like. So look that up.
Yeah, I mean, this song is like the kind of perfect set two closer. I would say more than even Hood. I tend to like Hood's more in an encore. But like the way that this song is designed to make you reflect on what you just experienced, what you just saw,
Yeah.
and celebrate it. There's just something about that. And without giving anything away, like what you described of similar to what we talked about last week with Possum, something has been lost. The feeling is still there, but the band is clearly not searching within this song for what it could do, what it could mean.
Yes.
And that is something that I think I would love to see a return to that at some point in time, because the way it runs right now, it it hits the expected points, but the unexpected surprises along the way are what really drew us as we were thinking about this song.
Yeah, I agree. I actually have a question for you before we get into the versions.
Ask away.
So to me, there's really two way that the jam goes, particularly the end of the jam into the build. Trey either kind of leads melodically or he hangs back and lets the band build through up to the peak. And then he usually takes over the peak, of course. Do you have one that you prefer?
I think that it's a great question. I think that Slave is one of those songs that inadvertently, when it was written, was designed for the transition the band would go through between 1993 and 1997 in becoming a much more democratic full
Mm,
band unit. Um, and I think it all is how they approach the quiet and how they approach coming out of the quiet. Um, to me, the best way is when Trey uses some feedback and maybe like a lower, like a one of his deeper string notes, um, to kind of set the mood. And then Mike and Paige in particular connect around Mike's bass riffs, that kind of like, that like explodes everywhere. Um, and Paige on the Baby Grand or the Rhodes.
yeah.
That to me leads to more depth within the jam, leads to more kind of off notes that is that kind of wabi sabi nature of quiet fish jams like this, where you get flaws in the beauty. And
Mm,
that to me indicates a band that is really listening in the silence. Kind of in the way that like a band like Talk Talk approached the record Spirit of Eden, where silence mattered as much as the notes. Um, this is not an advocation for silent jams. More on that in a future
you.
episode. Um, but like, how do you use that fusion between anyone who's heard this song, it's called 4 times at a fish show, knows where it's going. Um, but how do you keep them kind of off kilter about the direction it's going? It almost is
Yeah.
like watching like a caper film or like one of those like Ocean's 11 type movies where you know at the end this crew is going to steal the money and it's going to be
A
for
heist
good,
movie? My
a
favorite?
heist movie.
I love a heist movie.
But you've seen heist movies where you're like, I know exactly where this is going. And
Yeah.
you've seen heist movies where you're like, wow, I was actually pretty surprised by how you guys pulled that off. You always want the surprise. And with Slave, you know where we're going. It's how we get there that ultimately makes it. And I think if Trey hangs back, the how we get there is better.
Yeah. I agree. And I think there's, to keep with that metaphor, when you think about when you have a structure song like Slave, where, yeah, exactly, you know where it's going to go. The ways that it can surprise you is the emotion that's it's played with, and the intensity, and the patience and the listening. And I think you're right that when Trey does hang back, and I think that was a real benefit for the song, the band's commitment to exploration, because I think it really did add this element of Trey realizing that he didn't have to always lead this song to the peak, that he could kind of let the band work on that. And I love thinking about when a song, I was thinking about the Hood that I heard at MSG last year. I think it was like was it the 30th maybe? I think it was. And it was so good. And I think
They
it
didn't
was,
play at 12:30 last year.
they
That's a
didn't?
lie. No.
Was it 29?
They didn't
Maybe
play
it
at
was the year
12:30.
before.
They
Okay.
didn't play a
Anyway.
12:30 show last year is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. I'm telling you something good that happened at 12:30 last year. Let's get on board for this, Brian. It was 12:30 last year because I was on the floor and I was taping it. And I have, if you want to look at my Instagram, there's a video of the peak, of the Hood peak. And of course, we all know how Hood's going to peak. But the way that Trey is playing that Hood peak is so emotional. And that's what I think sets apart Slave, is if you can really feel their hearts behind it. And sometimes I feel like nowadays that can hit sometimes, but it's not always like, it has to be so earnest and so deep for Slave to really get there. Because again, the band has done that. It has delivered this song in a way that is so powerful that you kind of want that every time.
I just checked the fish.net set list, and the Harry Hood from that show is the only song from that show that is jam charted, which I disagree with
Yeah.
because I think the Down with Disease is actually quite good and pretty
Yeah.
underrated based on the show overall. But that is pretty funny that a 12:30 show happened in 4.0 and we get one jam charted song and it's the encore.
I could tell you I
Yeah,
was
that
there. It was funny. Funny is definitely the term I would use. It was fun. It
yeah,
was a fun
you
night.
thought it was as funny as On the Green Night 4.
Exactly. I had a great night, but not because of the jams, obviously.
Let's let's get into this because I think we are going
Yeah.
to reveal more about what we feel about this song uh based on how we have approached this chart. So we have four versions on the Mount Rushmore. Um why don't we just dive in? What is our
Yeah.
first version? Why is it our first version?
So I will say we're skipping over some really great slaves, as you might imagine. We can only do 4, so we're skipping some really great ones. We're skipping one of my absolutely most favorite. The one that I think we're skipping over that people might be surprised about, that I saw a lot online talked about when I was posting about this episode, was the 12:30:93 Portland version.
Mhm.
A lot of people really love that version. It's so beautiful. The way that Paige is playing on the piano in that version is so sophisticated. It's dramatic, it's emotional, it's everything you want from Slave to the Traffic Light. And one of my personal, oh, did you want to add something there?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, in listening to this, that version is very much based on the context versus like
Yeah.
when you listen to it, removing the context. I don't think it hangs with the best, but that is, I think it was Lock Steele who wrote it. There's a review of 12:30:93 in the Farmer's Almanac that I had from when I first became a Fish fan, which, by the way, still smells like Nag Champa, and it's one of my favorite things
Yes.
I own of, like,
Best smell.
physical media because it just smells like the head shop I bought it at. Shout out to Sight& and Sound in, Westmont, Illinois. That place just, like, took care of 16-year-old me and my other buddies who just had, like,
Yes.
long-ish gross hair and giant hemp necklaces, and the guy was like, "You guys need to go see Fish." Um, the write-up about that show really highlights the importance of them playing Slave that night. They had busted it out, like you said, on 8/6/93, and then they hadn't played it since then. And or they played it at Red Rocks 93, excuse me. They hadn't played it on the East Coast since the Nectar's days.
Yeah.
And the entire crowd, it sounds like is chanting slave and then the band rewards it. It's one of the great fan service moments of all time. I think we can both agree that the version is slightly removed from the best of slave.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing about Slave is that you do when you're doing something like Rushmore, you're thinking about context, but we're really thinking about the music, and so we are taking the emotional kind of context away from it,
As
which
hard
is
as that is
important.
for me.
It's really hard. Brian and I love context. And I will say we are also skipping over one of my favorite versions, which I did campaign for a little bit, but it was definitely the right move not to have it on here. But May 3rd, 1994, from Starwood Amphitheater in Tennessee, one of the most beautiful jam segments that Fish has ever played in Slave. It's so gorgeous. It's so beautiful. It's so spacious. It's so floating and patient and just an effortlessly emotional peak. It's perfect. But our first version of Slave on Mount Rushmore is, I will say, what I believe to be, I'm not going to speak for Brian here, the greatest Slave of all time. I think this is it. And I think that July 13th, 1994 from Big Birch is the greatest Slave. We also have a Mount Rushmore that we just anointed last week from Possum from this show. So this show is, this show needs to be released. It's crazy. But we have a fourth quarter, second to last song of the second set. This version is perfect. The audience starts clapping during the jam because it's just so beautifully done. They find this really orchestral dissonant space. Mike in this version is, I want to hear this archivally released so bad because Mike sounds incredible even on the soundboard. The way that Fishman slowly builds the rhythm out of it, and the band comes in so sweetly and so patiently, and then it just builds to this peak that is absolutely incredible. I don't know if there's a better version. I think the one we're going to talk about next is really close, but this version to me is just the top.
The one we're going to talk about next, I think, is the best version that has ever been
Ooh,
played.
okay,
So
good.
we're debating even as we are, anointing, which is just, that's the way that these shows have to go. There can
Mhm.
never be just like consensus. But I am right there with you. I mean, this version is really, really beautiful, and the way that it caps off a really wild set and a really wild, just snapshot of Fish in summer '94, I think ultimately is what drew us here.
Mhm.
I mean, this version has a very, very long quiet section, which shows this emerging infatuation with dissonance and silence and
Mm.
experimentation that the band would use in many other places and in other really great versions of Slave, but here employed in this version at the end of this set, where, we were saying earlier, context can't be the determining factor here. But I think like when you hear this version in isolation, plus also at the end of a set like this, you really get a sense of how much of like a breath of fresh air, contemplation this song offers. But then also, and this is something Fish is discovering in summer '94, there are all these avenues out of a song.
Mm.
That can allow them to experiment and jam in really unique ways. And this ultimately has it, plus a phenomenal peak from Trey at the end. I mean, his playing at the end of this is pure summer '94.
Yeah, it's so clean and emotional and effortless. You listening to Trey on some of these early Slave to the Traffic Lights, just like it's incredible. It's inspiring.
You also get the carryover in the Susie Greenberg of A Slave to
Mhm.
the Traffic Light tease. Like this vibe of this set is, how do we take all of our big songs, our Possum, our Wilson, our Tweezer, our Slave, our Susie Greenberg, and how do we mash them together? And that is a very unique aspect of this band at this point in time, that is figuring out the the spaces where they can fold songs in and fold ideas in on each other and see what comes out.
Big Birch. I was just talking to one of my really good friends from college, Michael, and he just told me he was at this show, which I didn't know. And he was just saying how incredible it was. So he's going to be excited to hear this. He was commenting on our Possum choice last week, and look at this, another Big Birch. So now this is one of those shows that has more than one Mount Rushmore in it.
This just got the gold, the golden highlight. We went through a pretty long period where we didn't have any golden highlights, no wave,
Mhm.
Iculus, cross-eyed, fluffhead, all unique versions. Now since Wave of Hope, christening 7/24/22, and Possum and Slave christening 7/13/94. We're just in a really special place with a couple of these shows. These are the shows that the band should be releasing, as long as they're 1.0 shows. But even the 2.0 and 3.0 that are already on Live Fish, throw them on a vinyl, man. What are we doing? Um,
Seriously.
well, let's go to a Slave that has been officially released.
Yes, it has.
And that's a trick comment because it's not what you think it is, listeners out there.
No, it's not.
We are skipping the Alive One Slave. I think different from, say, the Alive One Hood. I think that the Slave on Alive One is fantastic. I don't necessarily think it is the version that is put a stamp on it. This is what Slave sounds like. I think that's okay. It's a great version from a fantastic show. That show has a killer Bowie as well, 11/26/94. Um, the version we're going to go to is from an officially released show in 1995. Not that officially released show in 1995 with a fantastic slave. This is 12/7/1995. The rare, extremely rare, though very choice first set, mid first set take on
Yeah.
Slave to the Traffic Light. I am very much here for when this song is played outside of the norm of reality. I saw it twice back to back in fall 2021, San Francisco, and then Chula. Both
Mm.
shows featured mid first set slaves. It's a very special thing to get to that sense of contemplation at this point in time. This version, I think this is the strongest version of Slave to the Traffic Light that the band has ever played. You get this amazing riff from Trey that
Mm.
is stretched out. There's so much intensity. The peak is so big, but what really gets me about Slave at this point in the show is part of the challenge with this song is that when it is often played, which is to close out a set, a second set, or to be an encore, the band's tired. They're leaning into it, but they're not at that point of like peak what could happen tonight. Most of what could happen has already happened tonight. And so they were in reflective mode. Sometimes they're up against a curfew, so they can't push things as much as they would like to. When you're in the middle of the show, you can do anything you want, and especially this early in the show. And the silence that they sit in, the darkness that you hear early on, that then builds to this just like remarkable, like massive, massive peak 25, 30 minutes into the show really sets you up for what's to come with the remainder of the show. Um, Many people will say that we probably should have selected 12/14/95. The challenge I find with that is that that is a part of the Haley's NICU. That is a segment.
Yeah.
Maybe at someday in the distant future, HF Pod will cover Rushmore segments. I know I would love that. But for now, we are talking about just the song of its, in and of itself. And to me, 12/7 compared to 12/14 is just a better take on Slave to the Traffic Light and what it can do in isolation.
I fully agree. I think this is the other version that I think is the other best version, and there was no disagreement about these 2 versions being on the list. Big Birch and Niagara Falls were the no-brainers for us. I love the jam. It has such a percussive, jazzy feel to it, and like you mentioned, that riff is unbelievable, and how he allows it to build and dissipate in this really, really soft way. It's incredible, and yeah, this version to me is also just important because of where they were at this point in time, and I do think it's a really important point about what you're saying about the placement of it. I do think the consistent placement of where Fish usually plays this song does mean that it doesn't explore as much, and I think that is a disservice to the song, because think of like how good Fish is right now at ambient jamming. I think of the stuff they could do in Slave right now would just be absolutely incredible. And I agree, this is definitely the pick over the Binghamton. It wasn't so much a problem for me about that it was a segue or a segment, excuse me. But the Niagara Falls one just has more, to me, is a more perfect encapsulation of what Slave is. And it gets hard. It gets really hard to choose between some of these versions, especially the ones in 94 and 95, because they're all played really beautifully. There is also someone who is chomping during the jam segment that you can even hear on the archival release. And that is just such a war crime. Like, please stop. Like, if you are near the tapers at that point too, it's like, oh my God, he must have been standing like right next to the soundboard.
I will never understand the desire to talk at a Phish show. So I'm at a
Same.
complete loss. I got nothing to say to any of you at a Phish show. Like, I'm happy to have you in my presence. I'm happy to be around people, but like, aside from that was pretty great. Did you hear that? Oh my God. Like, outside of that, I got nothing to say until the show's over.
What about a like, oh my God, it's time to go to the bathroom? Maybe that too, but that's about it.
Well, the great thing, I have enough pee break songs that when one starts, my group just knows, like, I'm ducking out and I'll be back. And I'll be back
Yeah.
quick. But like, it's not a social event. What are we doing here? You
Make
know
it
what I
quick
mean?
if it's during the Yam vocal jam too. I've learned that lesson the hard way.
That is a new lesson. That is not
It's a new
not
one.
a old lesson. That is a new one. Funky bitch starting, that's an old lesson. My soul starting,
My soul
that's an old
always.
lesson.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, we are going to take a quick break for those listening at home. For those of you hanging out, you're just going to watch us sit in silence as we try to let the seconds tick by so that we can easily edit in this break. And we'll be back with more Rushmore Slaves. All right. We've done two mid-90s versions. I've just got some great comments here.
Yeah.
Alcohol is the main culprit. I'm guessing this is for why people talk at Phish shows. That's fair. That's fair. Ed says, just go. Like, there's no reason to talk about it. Just go. And Glenn Russell, how do you bring your young son to a show and not talk? That's a fair question. I have ingrained in my son that when we're watching baseball, when we're watching serious film, and when we're at Phish, we are there for them, for that experience to wash over us, and we are not there to have conversations. That said, I do end up spending half of the Phish show with him in my lap. So the ear to mouth ratio is very, very close. We can whisper to each other.
Fair. I like that. And I wouldn't expect Brian Brinkman's son to be a chomper. Let's be real here.
He's not. I've told him that that's just it's the worst thing that you could possibly do is chomp during art. You know, we don't want that.
Yeah.
So we go from Niagara Falls in the middle of winter to one of the more idyllic Phish environments ever. Meg, why don't you tell us about our third Slave to the Traffic Light, Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, this is a festival slave, and you know, there's something about festival versions of certain songs like Harry Hood, Divided Sky, Fluffhead, Slave to the Traffic Light. You're at a festival, it just hits different. And this is the first Phish festival, and I remember being at Red Rocks a week or so before, and my boyfriend telling me that he was no longer returning to college with me in Arizona. I would be going back with my friend Michael, who I just mentioned, and instead he would be continuing on to go to the Clifford Ball. And it was hard not to be at the Clifford Ball. And I think that this version of a Slave is one of the reasons why I had wanted to be there so badly, because I knew that they'd be playing their songs in a way that they hadn't before. And when you listen to this version of Slave to the Traffic Light from the Clifford Ball, this is to me the true moment that they start to embrace the darkness inherent in this song and what that can do. There's definitely darkness in earlier versions. There's even darkness in versions in the early 90s. but nothing as committed and as impassioned as the darkness in this version. The way that they have like this heavy metal rocking in the early part of the song, it provides such an incredible dynamic shift to the quiet, really melancholy jam. And I think that is really something that make this version stand out, and also points to how the band was going to start to think differently about their music. And you can really hear this. The peak of this jam is really a full band effort. It is so powerful. It is really, really cooperative. It's less clean from Trey in the build, but because the band is really working together for longer, I think it works really, really well. And then when Trey explodes out with his solo and he trills like crazy in this peak, it feels really special and has that kind of. This is the first time that the band has gathered this many people together for their own festival. It had to have such an emotional catharsis in that moment. And it's a beautiful version. So 8/17/1996 from the Clifford Ball.
Yeah, I was on board with this from the jump. This was one of my, I always kind of, when I look at our master list, I always kind of think to myself, okay, what are the 4 versions based on what I know that are going to go on here? And part of the fun is proving yourself wrong and listening to a
Yeah.
version you definitely thought was going to go on and being like, I don't know if this says as much as I thought it would. But then the other fun is kind of like revisiting versions in the context of the project and being like, whoa, that has to be here. This was one of those. I thought it was going to go on beforehand. I listened through and I was just like, yeah, there's just no way we can leave this off. You think about kind of the difference between this and the Binghamton version, because part of the appeal of this is where it comes from a set list construction standpoint. The second set from 8/17/96, I think, is on par with one of the more perfect sets. Not a tentpole jam vehicle in a way that you would come to associate with these like perfect second sets from 97 onward, but the clean approach to music, the focus on uh, their core songwriting catalog, the power with which they're playing, everything you just talked about in terms of this is the first time all these people have been gathered together. They're in the Northeast. They're ending this tour, big transitional period in the band's career that I don't think they could have really understood how big this set and this festival was to the trajectory of the band. But, Curtin, Jim, Ice, Brother, and then this 4-song finale, Fluffhead, Antelope, Golgi, Slave. I don't like, there's not a lot of second sets that end like that.
Yeah.
Incredibly rare. And the way that they're feeling by the time they get to this Slave, where they're just nailing big set closer after another, and they are playing these songs to perfection, plus expanding in really unique areas. You hear it in this Slave. There's so much power associated with this. It's a phenomenal version that I would recommend anyone out there check out, listen to, get those vibes, feel it. This is Fish realizing there's a maximalist power to what they can do. And there's
Mm.
something really dynamic that they can do in front of, doesn't matter the audience size, but the bigger the audience gets, they can provide an experience that um, is why we go and see them hundreds of times, and why we've been talking about them for so long. This version has all of that.
That dun 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 dun
Oh,
dun, like, that's so killer. It's so good. I had to be talked into this one a little bit. I don't really know why. I think I was really kind of in the ambient floating space of Slave, and but once I listened to it after we talked about it, I was like, "You're right. It has to be in there." It's awesome.
it's amazing. All right, our last one was our most contentious, our
Mhm.
biggest debate. I think we both had similar ideas about how we wanted to approach this song's arc. Um, while also, I think as we talked through like the rationale around what we're looking for ultimately from Slave. And one of the things we came to the realization of as we're talking through this is what does slave mean in the window of its peak versus what does it mean outside of it? And what I mean when I say that is we talked about this during our very first Rushmore episode. I felt it was incredibly important to have a 2.0 version of Bathtub Gin to showcase that this song transitioned into a dark and seedy jam vehicle. But I didn't think it was necessary to have a 3.0 or 4.0 one, even though there have been really strong 3.0, 4.0 versions, because Bathtub Gin's been usually one thing in 3.0 and 4.0. Um, a different song here, Down with Disease. We went with 8/17/97, 12/31/99, 10/29/13, and 7/16/22. One of the challenges of Down with Disease was that has been a consistently great jam vehicle for the entirety of its lifetime. So you have to show that arc, which means some really impactful versions are going to be left out. As we've talked about throughout this episode, Slave to the Traffic Light really peaks in the mid 90s. There are versions that are quality since then. We'll throw those out in our honorable mentions, but I don't think anybody would be arguing that Slave to the Traffic Light is still a make or break song in Fish's live show. I'd like it to be again. I'd love that. But similar to Possum, this is played because it's played and it's played this way. There's not like a how do we reinvent this? There was a period where they were starting to figure out how do we reinvent this song and what do we do with this song and what could this song possibly mean outside of just a second set closer that's contemplative and heroic and euphoric. And that period kind of represents the end of this song as a introspective experimental jam vehicle. And that is the fall of 1997. And so there kind of brings you to a couple versions that we talked about. One of which is pretty standard, one of which is a bit too experimental and a bit too outside of the norm. The one that we landed on fuses the experimentation with the heroic peak, the euphoria that we come to associate with Slave, and stretches it out about 5 minutes longer than your standard version of Slave in a way that shows that, hey, man, you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. Just give us all the feels over a elongated period in time. And that is 11/14/1997 from Salt Lake City, the conclusion of a 4-song second set. Really amazing version, comes out of an outstanding twist. I love this version, and I love it even more now after listening to it in the context of this project, because you could just really hear what the band was going for at that point in time and how they delivered. But your thoughts, you had to be convinced of this. So tell me your thoughts.
I did, and I have been convinced. I think this is the one that maybe one of the only ones we've put on Rushmore that wasn't mentioned in the socials when I posted about this episode. So I think it's going to be exciting for people, and I hope people check this song out, because I think when I was originally thinking about, it's so interesting. We talk about this a lot about Rushmore, where it's either, is it the perfect version of the song because it's exactly what you expect out of the song, or does it take the song somewhere new? And I was really torn about, there are some versions that I'll mention during honorable mentions that do go somewhere new or different with Slave. And I was curious if we needed to have that on here, but then I decided that that's not really what Slave does. Like, Slave doesn't ever, it is really the epitome of type 1 jamming. And there have been some type 2 moments, and we'll talk about them, but that is not what it does. And so finding a version that does play with experimentation, has that darkness. I feel like if we have to include something later on with Slave, we want it to be something that has more darkness. And this version definitely does. It also has a lot of the kind of dissonant playing, which I think is part of what I'm interested in with Slave, and where I think it could go now in a way that would be really interesting. It's really delicate. The jam is super slow and mournful in a way that I think they could only do really, really well as they moved past into the later parts of the 90s, because they started to have more darkness in the universe. If you listen to, like, think about the really early versions or the white demo, the white tape demo, those versions are so sunny and optimistic and full of like positive light. And it's fun to hear the song go dark and know that their world was getting more complicated and darker. And I think this version really does a great job of encapsulating that, but also still hitting all the points that makes Slave what it is.
I think that's it, because the other version, 12.597, gets way out there and showcases what could happen with this song as it goes to silence and they move into true dissonance. And yet, almost in the same way that like Reba operates, I kind of need to hear the end of Slave.
Yeah, like that version never peaks. It just fades into lizards, and I don't know if you can have Slave without the peak.
Right. And this is a big debate around like one of my selections for well, no, I shouldn't say that, because it's happened a couple of times. Like Hood has gone unfinished a couple of times. And I think it's the same thing. We kind of need the finished version of Harry Hood to be, you can jam as long as you want, as long as you come back to you can feel good about Hood.
Yes.
Fluffhead, every time that has jammed, you get the Fluffhead peak and then you get the jam. So I think ultimately with Slave, the 12.597 version is very cool. It's very wild. It's definitely something you have to hear, highlights where the band was at fall 97. But in terms of Slave, it kind of misses what makes Slave essential. And you get that in this 11.14 version.
Yeah.
You know, and compared to some, because I think one of the challenges as well when we're thinking about such a small window like this, similar to what we did last week with Possum, is you are comparing a lot of versions that ultimately sound similar to each other. So
Totally.
there's
It was a huge problem for me this week.
right, like you're
Mhm.
like a lot of the 95 or 94 and 95 versions. I think you get what you're looking for in Big Birch and Niagara Falls. Could you make an argument for other versions? 100%. But the best part of those versions are sometimes substandard to what they would do on the 12.795 or 7.1394 versions, even though they're really great in their own right. So like that's challenging. What do we do beyond 97? I mean, there's still some great versions that we can start going through, but ultimately, like some of my favorite post 11.14.97 versions, 12.7.97, really about the segue from the tube jam. 8.12.98, a lot of that's a part of, you know, the vibe with Ramble On. Same with 7.4.2000. A lot of that's the vibe with Twist and with the set overall as a whole. Some of our favorite 3.0, 4.0 versions, 9.6.15, 1.17.16, 10.16.21, 8.14.22. These are great versions for the era. There's no way that they are going to surpass the great versions from the 90s, though, just based on how they approach the song.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, we're not here to propose that Trey should always return to the song. So, Trey, don't feel like you have to return to the song, okay? This isn't Blaze On. You don't need to you don't have to go back. You don't have to go back to Everything's Right. But you do
This is a
have to go back.
contextual argument, bro.
Exactly.
Okay?
Don't get these twisted. Like make sure you're not taking this out of context to anybody. But you do have to finish Slave and you do have to finish Hood and Fluffhead. And Reba. Thank you. Yeah, I think the only other versions I'll say post that, well, I do want to say that the 7.4 2000 from Camden was talked about a lot online. I think that's a fan favorite for sure. I love the slower tempo of that one. And then just the repetitive peaks just over and over again. It's incredible. I also really like the 225.03 from Philly. That is
Cool.
also middle of the first set. Yeah, it's really angry and dark before the jam, which I love. And Trey hangs back in that jam too. But I really love that Dick's version too from 2015. That is beautiful. Trey's phrasing in that one is outstanding, and he's got that really long sustained note that builds to the peak. It's awesome. So yeah, there's some good versions post 97, but none that are going to make our Rushmore.
None that are going to make our Rushmore.
Mm-mm.
We've got 7.13.94, 12.7.95, and 8.17.96, and 11.14.97. I think that's a really good 45 minutes of music that you could all listen to on your commute homes. Give yourself the Bliss vibes. You know,
Yeah.
it's hard to go wrong there. I think that we did as good as we possibly could for Slave to the Traffic Light. I hope that we have honored the song and what it means in Fish history, and I hope that these versions unlock something for you. Transitioning quickly, we have only a couple episodes left here in our 2025 calendar. Next week, we are going to do a really fun thing. We are doing another draft, our last draft of the year, and we're going to be joined by two esteemed, I don't know if I'd say esteemed, one of them is probably esteemed, two esteemed-ish podcasters, Mr. Justin Bruce and Mr. Ryan Storm. And the two of them are going to join us to help us draft New Year's Eve holiday run shows and jams. We're going to all draft a 12/28 show, 12/29 show, a 12/30 show, 12/31 show, a random holiday date show, and then we're going to draft holiday jams. So it's going to be super fun. Is there anything else I'm missing? Oh, we're going to have a wild card show just in case. I think that's correct. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're having a wild card show. You can pick
a wild card
anything from
show.
any category. Yeah, we do.
Okay,
I have
perfect.
a lot of work to do for this this draft, but I'm really excited to draft. Obviously, I've podcasted a lot with Ryan on his show, and he's been on ours. And I got to go on Vice or Virtue, which is Justin's Eggy podcast, and that was awesome. So I'm really excited to podcast with Justin again.
He is super fun, super knowledgeable. When I presented them with joining us for this draft, they were both all in, and then Justin said, "Oh wait, you just finished preparing for this. Now I have to start. What is going on?"
Get used to my life, Justin. Brian's probably been
fun.
ready for this draft for like 3 months. So
we'll go over this. I am. I'm all prepped up. I got my whole list. I'm ready.
oh my God.
Ed asked, wild card is different from random holiday show. Yes, those will be two different categories. We'll explain it all. We'll show it all when we're doing it, but that will be next week. And then we will have one more Mount Rushmore episode to end the season. Meg, do you want to tell people what our final Rushmore is going to be?
Yeah, our final Rushmore of the year is going to be You Enjoy Myself.
What else?
What else?
YEM.
Wait, Brian constructed the end of this first set of Rushmore, and it's a banger.
It's a banger. I'm very curious your thoughts after you listen to about 45 odd yems.
I know I'm like,
there's a lot.
Kind of dreading it a little bit because I'm not a vocal jam person, as fans of this podcast know.
You know what? I'm not a white dudes playing funk kind of guy. I learned that after about 10 yams, I was like, wait, I think I figured out this jam here. What's going on? It's going to be a ton of fun though. It's YEM. It's You Enjoy Myself. It's YEM. It's YEMSG.
Classic Fish. Yeah, YEMSG.
Fish.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That'll be how we finish out our year, and then we will obviously have the MSG shows to take in. Question about whether or not there's going to be an MSG meetup. Do you have info on that?
I have info. Yes, it's looking like I'm going to be doing some sort of podcast event with Mike Greenspan from Relics, and that will be announced shortly. And then hopefully we'll have some sort of an Osiris meetup, maybe at one of the bars near MSG. So I will keep everybody posted on socials and let you know more next week as well.
That'd be super fun. I will be, per usual, taking in the MSG run from my couch. It's one of my favorite routines of the year. Get all comfy, order some takeout, watch fish. My son usually stays up for it. Big time man on holiday mode. Yeah, I get to start working from home next week. And then
jealous.
I'm taking days off before Christmas. And then we're taking I'm off the full week between Christmas and New Year's. And then we're taking an additional week off after New Year's to go to Texas for a family reunion. I'm so close. I'm like right there. Last night I went and saw It's a Wonderful Life in theaters, which was, my way of kicking off the Christmas season. weeping in a theater with a bunch of geriatrics. It was an amazing, it was an amazing experience. So we're almost there. I will not be at any sort of holiday event here in New York City, but I'm sure you guys are all going to have a good time, and it'll be a ton of fun for us to recap MSG. Another MSG come, another MSG gone. Will it be packed with highlights? Will it be what is in store? We have no
Well, the
idea.
real question is 29 the new 30? That's the real question. Is the 29th show going to be killer like the last 2 years and the 30th be sort of more filler? We'll see. We'll see.
I mean, this is even going back to 2022 because 1230 from
Yeah, that's true.
2022 is very, very good. But 1229, 2022, I think we can agree that's the show.
Yeah, so 3 years, I guess. That's crazy.
What
Yeah.
22, that was,
Oh, 4 years?
if you recall,
I have
I
to pull that up. I don't remember this. Hold on.
I was giving up on fish. I thought I was done after Alpine Dicks, the dreaded
Oh, yeah.
Alpine Dicks 2022 run. And then they opened 12/29/22 with a phenomenal Fluffhead in
Love
Your Pet
Head.
Cat. And then the second set has a killer David Bowie, an outstanding Ruby Waves, a really good You Enjoy Myself. Something else I'm forgetting. The 30th has that great No Man and Sand. Oh, that Sand is just so choice.
Oh, this set is so good that set 2 from the 30th was good. No
It's like a
Men,
5
Golden Age,
song,
Sand, If I
nothing
Could,
else
I
needs
Always
to, yeah,
Wanted It This Way.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Come on.
Great
That's
stuff.
good, good.
That was when my love and infatuation for fish was reborn in a big way. Ed asks here, I'm in Texas, where are you going? I'm gonna be outside of Austin. I don't know if that works out, but maybe we'll say hey. But yeah, we've got 2 shows left for 2025 and then our MSG recap when we come back in early 2026. Thank you all for hanging with us here as we tracked the best slave to the traffic lights of all time. What is it all time? We'll see. We hope you guys have a great rest of your week. We will see you next week for a highly competitive take down Ryan Storm draft session. Can't wait for it.
Yep, see everybody next Wednesday.
See you guys.